That vending machine in your office break room isn't owned by your company. It's not owned by the building either. Somebody drives a van to that machine every week, unlocks the front panel, counts the cash, restocks the rows, and leaves before most people even notice they were there. You probably walked past that person a dozen times. You've never once wondered who they were or what that machine is actually worth to them. Here's the uncomfortable part. You'd assume a business that just sits there humming in a hallway, taking cards, and needing nobody to run it must be close to free money. It isn't. The machine is the cheapest, least important part of the whole operation. The real business is invisible, and it has almost nothing to do with snacks. So what does it actually take to own one of these machines? Not lease it, not franchise it. Own it outright and put it somewhere that pays you back. A single decent snack machine costs somewhere between $3,000 and $6,500 new, more if it's a combo machine that also does drinks, more again if you want a touch screen and full inventory tracking built in. Add the first fill of inventory. Add insurance, because a building will not let an uninsured machine anywhere near their property. Add a placement fee if the location wants one up front, which strong locations often do. All in, $5,000, $8,000 gets one working machine live in one real building. That's your entry number for machine one. But almost nobody serious stops at one machine, and here's why that matters. One machine, in an average spot, nets you somewhere around $150 a month after every cost is stripped out. That's not a business. That's a hobby with a receipt. Vending only becomes real money at scale, and scale means a route, a string of machines spread across a city, serviced on a single efficient loop, each one adding profit without adding a second person to pay. 10 machines, run properly, is a real second income, the kind that covers a car payment without touching your day job. 25 machines, run properly, can replace a salary outright. 50 machines, run properly, can outperform most small businesses that require a lease, a storefront, and a staff, while the person running it spends more hours driving between locations than standing in front of customer. And the entry number for that isn't $5,000. It's $40,000 to $60,000 once you're buying in volume and building a route that doesn't waste half its week driving in circles between locations that don't talk to each other. Which machine, though? Because vending machine isn't one product, it's three completely different businesses wearing the same coin slot. A bulk machine, the kind that dispenses gumballs or gumball-sized toys for $1, costs as little as $500 to $1,500, and it's the cheapest possible way into the industry. But the margin per turn is tiny, and the locations that want them are limited. A standard snack or drink machine, the kind you actually picture when you hear the word vending, sits in that $3,000 to $6,500 range and does the bulk of the real revenue in this industry. A smart combo machine with a touchscreen, remote inventory tracking, and a full cashless payment system can run $10,000 to $15,000, and it earns that premium back through fewer wasted trips because the machine texts you when a slot is running low instead of you finding out by driving there and looking. According to the National Automatic Merchandising Association, the trade body that tracks this industry, vending operators across the country are projected to pull in close to $8 billion in combined revenue this year alone. That's not a niche side hustle industry. That's a real, structured retail channel, just one that happens to have no storefront and no cash register with a person standing behind it. Picture the actual weekly loop for a moment, because it grounds everything that follows. An operator with 20 machines spends a Tuesday morning loading a van with cases of chips, bottled water, and energy drinks bought the week before. They drive to stop one, a warehouse, swap out the near-empty rows, count the cash box, note the number in a spreadsheet or an app, and move to stop 2 before the trucks even fully park straight. By early afternoon, they've hit 12 stops. By Thursday, the remaining 8. That's the entire operational reality of a mid-sized route. A loop, a notebook, and a van, repeated every week for years, with a machine doing the selling while the operator does the driving. Here's what's actually silently on your mind right now. If the machine does all the work on its own, 24 hours a day, why doesn't literally everyone do this? Because the machine was never the business. The location is. And a good location is far harder to get than a good machine is to buy. Anyone with $8,000 and a credit card can have a brand new smart vending machine delivered to their driveway by next week. Almost nobody can walk into a hospital administrator's office and walk out with a signed, exclusive placement agreement on the same afternoon. That asymmetry, easy machine, hard contract, is the entire reason this industry hasn't been flooded into unprofitability the way so many other low startup cost businesses eventually are. Why does this even exist as its own industry, separate from the stores those buildings could technically build themselves? That's the next question worth answering, because the reason is stronger than most people expect. Vending exists because retail space is expensive and staff time is expensive, and a huge share of buildings have neither the square footage nor the payroll budget to run a staffed snack counter. A hospital break room, a warehouse floor at 2 in the morning, a community college hallway between classes, an apartment complex laundry room. None of these places want to hire someone, pay them a wage, cover their benefits, and schedule their shifts just to sell a bag of chips to 40 people a day. The math has never worked for a staff counter in a spot like that, and it never will. But the people are still there, still hungry, still walking past an empty wall with nowhere to spend $5. That gap between too small to staff and too busy to ignore is exactly what a vending machine fills. And it's a gap that has existed in some form since the first coin-operated machines showed up in train stations over a century ago. It's not going away because the underlying economics that created it, labor costs versus foot traffic, haven't changed, and if anything, the gap has widened as minimum wages have climbed faster than break room snack spending. So if the demand is guaranteed, why isn't the supply of good locations easy to get? Because vending doesn't run on storefronts. It runs on contracts. You don't buy a shop with a lease you control. You buy the right to place a single machine somewhere someone else already owns, and that right is called a location, and locations are negotiated, not simply found. Facility managers, HR departments, apartment landlords, warehouse operations leads, they control every square foot of the real estate you actually need, and most of them already have a vending contact from a competitor or a corporate policy against outside machines, or a flat demand for a cut of your revenue just for letting your box sit against their wall. That cut is called a location commission, and it's the single most underestimated cost in the entire industry. It typically runs somewhere between 10 and 25% of gross sales, paid straight back to the building before you've covered a single one of your own expenses, before product, before fuel, before the card processing fee, before anything. You're not just competing with other operators to find empty wall space. You're negotiating rent in real time for a box the size of a refrigerator, and the landlord holds almost all the leverage in that conversation because there are always 2 or 3 other operators in the city who would take that exact spot at their price if you walk away. There's a full chain of people involved in getting a single machine live and legal, and almost none of them show up when you picture vending machine business in your head. There's the facility manager who signs off on the placement and negotiates the commission. There's the accountant, yours or theirs, who has to figure out sales tax. Most states treat vending sales as taxable retail, meaning every candy bar sold owes the state a cut you're personally responsible for collecting and remitting, whether or not you remember to build it into your pricing. There's the health department in states that regulate perishable vending items like sandwiches or dairy, requiring a permit and periodic inspection before you're allowed to put anything refrigerated behind that glass. There's the equipment financer if you're borrowing to buy machines instead of paying cash, adding a monthly note on top of everything else the route has to cover before you see $1 profit. Every one of these people gets paid or satisfied before you do, and skipping any single one of them, especially the sales tax, is the kind of mistake that looks fine for a year and then turns into a painful, retroactive bill with penalties attached. Which locations are actually worth fighting that hard for once all of that is accounted for? That's the next question, and the answer is where the real money math starts. The national average puts a single machine's performance somewhere between $100 and $300 a week in gross sales, and that range depends almost entirely on one thing: how many people walk past it who are hungry, bored, or both. A weak spot might do $50 a week, and $50 a week isn't worth the gas it costs to drive there and restock it. That machine is actively losing you money the moment you factor in your own time. A strong spot, a hospital, a 24-hour distribution warehouse, a large apartment complex with 300 units, can push past $500 a week, sometimes closer to $700 if it's the only machine in the building. Let's build this the way you'd actually plan a route, one machine at a time, and watch the number climb. One machine in an average office does $200 a week in gross sales. That's $800 a month. Strip out product cost first. Usually 30 to 40% of gross for standard snacks and drink from a supplier like Coca-Cola or Pepsi, and you've lost roughly $300, leaving $500. Strip out the location commission next. Call it 15% of the original gross, another $120 gone. Strip out fuel for the weekly drive, card processing fees on every cashless tab, and a rough monthly allowance for repairs and jams, and you land somewhere between $100 and $200 a month from one single machine. That's one machine. Now, put 10 of those on a service loop, And here's the part that makes vending genuinely different from almost any other small business. Your fixed costs barely move when you add a machine. You're not hiring anyone to service machine 11. You're not renting more floor space. You're driving 5 extra minutes on a route you were already running that week. 10 machines at roughly that same rate puts you somewhere between $1,000 and $2,000 a month in real net profit. Push the same route to 25 machines, blending a handful of strong $500 a week locations in with the average $200 spots, and a well-run route lands between $1,200 and $3,000 a month. Get to 50 machines, add cashless readers from a payment processor like Cantaloupe or Nayax to capture the tap, to pay customers who'd otherwise walk away from a cash-only box, and shift the product mix toward premium drinks and healthier snacks carrying 40 to 50% margins instead of the standard 30. And you're looking at a route that can clear 6 figures a year in gross with a meaningfully fatter net behind it. 50 machines. That's the real number most people are picturing when they say they want to get into vending. Not 5. Compare that latter to what it would take to hit similar numbers with a storefront business, and the appeal gets sharper. A small retail shop clearing $2,500 a month in profit needs a lease, needs staff, or needs to be there yourself every open hour, needs to cover rent whether customers show up or not. A 25-machine vending route clearing that same number needs about 15 hours a week of your own time, no lease of its own, and no payroll at all. The trade-off is that a storefront can, in theory, keep growing sales the longer a customer stands inside it. A vending machine cannot. It sells exactly what's in the slots at exactly the price on the label to whoever happens to walk by that day, and not $1 more. That ceiling is the honest trade-off for the low overhead, and it's why the real ceiling for most operators isn't machine count. It's how many good locations exist in a drivable radius of home. That's the ladder, and it's a genuinely climbable one. But the ladder only holds up if every rung on it stays healthy, and that part is nowhere near as guaranteed as it looks from the outside. Here's what actually wrecks most vending operators, and it isn't theft, and it isn't a machine breaking down on a Tuesday. It's something with no name in most business plans, so give it one. Route rot. Route rot is what happens when a location that used to perform quietly stops performing, and you don't notice for months because the machine is still technically sitting there, still technically running, still technically making some money. A building changes its shift schedule, and the hallway traffic that used to pass your machine at 3 a.m. disappears overnight. A new gym opens 2 blocks away and steals a chunk of the snack traffic your machine used to get after workouts. The facility manager who liked you, who let your route in over 3 competitors, gets promoted or replaced, and the new one wants a higher commission or is already talking to someone else. None of this arrives all at once, with a warning. It arrives slowly, one slightly lighter cash count at a time, until you're driving 45 minutes each way, twice a week, to service a machine that's now barely covering its own commission. Route rot is the reason vending operators, who look profitable on paper, quietly go broke over 18 months without ever noticing the exact moment it happened. You built your fuel budget, your restocking schedule, and your mental math around a location doing $300 a week. 6 months later, it's doing $90, and nobody called to tell you because nobody was ever going to. The building doesn't phone you to say business dropped. You find out the same way every time, by driving there and seeing the same 3 rows of chips still sitting in the same slots you filled 3 weeks earlier, untouched. There's a second, smaller villain riding alongside route rot that deserves its own mention, because it hits at a different angle: vandalism and theft. A machine sitting unattended in a hallway for a week at a time is, to a certain kind of person, an invitation. Pry bars against the coin door. Someone rocking the whole unit, trying to shake a bag of chips loose. In a handful of unlucky locations, a smashed glass front that cost several $100s to repair, on top of whatever product and cash was lost in the process. It's a real cost, and it's why insurance isn't optional. But it's also rare enough, compared to route rot, that most operators over-worry about theft and under-worry about the slow, silent decline of a location that used to be great and quietly isn't anymore. Route rot doesn't announce itself once. It shows up differently at every single location, on its own schedule, which is exactly what makes it so dangerous. You can't set one alarm for it. It shows up as a slowly declining cash count at the warehouse. It shows up as a sudden commission demand at the apartment complex. It shows up as a locked front door and a sorry, corporate's bringing in their own vendor now at the office building you've served for 3 years. Each one looks like an isolated problem, strung together across a 50-machine route, They're the difference between a business that compounds and a business that quietly bleeds out one location at a time. The operators who survive route rot are the ones who track cash counts location by location, every single visit, log the same day, no exceptions, and who treat 2 consecutive weeks at any one machine as a 5-alarm signal to renegotiate the commission, relocate the machine, or pull it entirely before it drags the whole route's average down. The operators who don't survive it are the ones who fall in love with a location because it used to be their best one and keep servicing a dying machine out of pure habit and sunk cost loyalty, bleeding fuel and hours into a spot that quietly stopped paying for itself months ago. You'd assume, going into this, that the real money in vending is in the snacks and drinks themselves. Pick the right candy bar, mark it up $1, and watch the margin roll in every week. It's not. Product margin is real, but it's thin, and every single operator in your city has access to the exact same wholesale suppliers you do, buying the exact same case of chips at close to the exact same price. If the product were the edge, everyone would have the same edge, and nobody would be making real money in this industry. The actual profit engine sits somewhere else entirely, and it's easy to miss because it isn't a product at all. The real asset in vending isn't the machine sitting in the hallway. It's the contract, a signed, exclusive location agreement. The legal right to be the only vending operator allowed in that building is worth far more than a box of snacks bolted to the floor beneath it. That contract is what you're actually building, one negotiated handshake at a time, every time you add a location to your route. It's the reason established vending routes routinely sell for 2 to 4 times their annual net profit when an operator retires or exits the business. A buyer isn't paying for 40 aging machines that have depreciated for years. They're paying for 40 locked-in locations that already produce steady revenue, with the landlord relationship already smoothed over, the commission already negotiated down, and the awkward first year of building trust already done by someone else. This is also exactly where scale quietly compounds in your favor, in a way that's invisible from a single machine. A one-machine operator buys snacks at close to retail prices from a wholesale club, paying roughly what anyone with a membership card pays. A 50-machine operator buys full pallets directly from a regional distributor at 15 to 20% below that price, because volume purchasing is the one place vending genuinely rewards getting bigger instead of punishing it. 2 operators can sell the exact same candy bar for the exact same $1.50 in 2 different cities and land on completely different margins purely because one of them buys by the case and the other buys by the pallet. The hidden profit engine was never a secret product line. It's purchasing power stacked on top of contract control, running quietly underneath a business that looks, from the outside, like nothing more than a box that takes quarters and cards. Think about what that actually means for how you'd build a route if you were serious about it. Every new location isn't just this week's extra $100. It's a permanent addition to your purchasing volume, which quietly lowers your cost on every single other machine on the route, on every single visit, for as long as you hold that contract. A route builder who understands this stops asking, is this location worth adding by itself? And starts asking, what does this location do to my total buying power? Because the 10th machine doesn't just add its own profit, it slightly improves the margin on machines 1 through 9 as well, the moment your order size crosses into the next distributor discount tier. So after the location commissions, the product cost, the fuel, the insurance, the card processing fees, and the slow bleed of route rot on your weaker spots, what do you actually walk away with at the end of a real year? Start from the top, with a well-run 25-machine route blending average and strong locations. That route generates somewhere around $40,000 to $60,000 a year in gross sales across every machine combined. Pull out product cost first. Call it 35% of that gross. You've lost roughly $18,000. Pull out location commissions across the whole route next. Call it 15% of gross. Another $7,000 gone. Pull out fuel, maintenance, card processing fees, and insurance for a route that size. Figure another $5,000 to $7,000 a year. What's left after every single one of those costs is somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000 in real net profit for a business you can run entirely in the spare hours around a full-time job. Push that same operator to 50 machines. Add volume purchasing through a real distributor account instead of a wholesale club membership, and shift the mix toward the higher margin premium drinks and healthier snacks. And that number can realistically climb toward $50,000 to $60,000 a year, the kind of figure experienced full-time operators in the industry actually report. And if that operator ever decides to sell, the route itself, the contracts, the locations, the client relationships built over years of showing up on time, can be worth another 2 to 4 times whatever that annual net profit number lands on. That's not a hobby cashing out. That's a real, sellable small business, built one sign location at a time, dressed up the whole way as something as small and unglamorous as a snack machine. Break that $15,000 to $25,000 figure down to a monthly number, and a lean 25 machine route nets somewhere around $1,500 a month. That's real money for a route serviced in maybe 15 hours a week around a day job. But it's a long way from replacing a full-time salary. And this is exactly where new operators either scale correctly or stall out permanently at that first plateau. The jump from 25 machines to 50 doesn't double your hours. It maybe adds 5. What it does is spread your fixed costs. The van, the insurance, the accounting, the time spent driving between stops that were already on your loop, across twice the revenue. That's the entire argument for scaling a route instead of staying comfortable at a size that already feels manageable. There's also a financing question worth being honest about before jumping in. Buying 25 machines outright at $5,000 average per unit is a $100,000 to $25,000 cash outlay most people don't have sitting around. Equipment financing exists specifically for this, typically running interest in the high single digits to low double digits annually, spread over 3 to 5 years. That monthly note comes directly off your net profit line, which means a financed route needs to clear a higher gross before the operator personally sees a dollar. One more reason experienced operators tend to start with 2 or 3 machines paid in cash, prove the model works on a small scale first, and only then borrow to scale once they know exactly which types of locations perform and which don't. None of that number happens by accident, and none of it happens without doing the 2 things most new operators skip in the excitement of buying their first machine. Track every single location's performance, every single visit, so route rot gets caught in week 2 instead of discovered by accident in month 6. And negotiate every contract like it's the actual asset you're building, because it is. The machine is just the delivery mechanism, replaceable for a few $1,000s whenever it breaks. The signed right to stand in that specific hallway, in that specific building, is the business. If you were actually going to look into this seriously, the first move isn't buying a machine at all. It's spending 2 weeks calling facility managers at 10 buildings you'd actually want a machine in before you spend a single dollar on equipment, and seeing how many of them will even talk to you about a commission. Track how many say yes, how many already have a vendor, and how many name a commission on the spot without you asking. That single exercise, done before any money changes hands, tells you more about whether this business works in your city than any spreadsheet of national averages ever will. The machine is the easy part. The signature is the hard part, and it's the part worth testing first. That office breakroom machine you've walked past without a second thought, more times than you can count, it was never just a box of chips and a card reader humming quietly in a corner. It's a signed agreement somebody fought for. It's a purchasing account built on volume. It's a route schedule someone assembled one negotiated location at a time, tracked cash count by cash count, and defended against route rot for years without you ever knowing their name. The snacks were never the business. The right to be standing in that hallway always was.